going to take a look at the new Fox ATS steering stabilizer for the Ford F250, F350 trucks. But before we talk about this steering stabilizer, I want to tell you what steering stabilizers are supposed to do in general, because I think there's a misconception about them. Now, with solid axle trucks, you basically have your two front wheels linked together with a tie rod, and then you have a drag link going up into your steering box. And the problem with solid axle trucks is that any sort of movement of either tire basically moves the other tire. And when you go over a bump up or down, it moves all of your steering components. So essentially what a steering stabilizer is designed to do is to help isolate that steering input that you feel from the tires and from the axles moving in the steering wheel. So as the tires move about, you're not getting jerked around with the steering. You're feeling it more of a muted, slight, variance in the steering. Now, the stock steering stabilizer that comes with these trucks is just a steel-bodied monotube steering stabilizer, which realistically works all right if you have stock-sized tires and you're not lifted. But as soon as you lift a truck or put large or aggressive tires on it, that steering input that steering dampener is trying to handle is going to override it. It's not going to be able to handle or keep up with how much those tires or that lift is going to provide for feedback. So you want to upgrade to a better steering stabilizer. Now, you've probably seen most of the cool big lifted off-road trucks run dual steering stabilizers, and they typically mount them down on the tie rod down below on the axle. Now, the problem with that is that, first of all, it's down where it can get hit by debris if you're off-road, and any sort of on-road kick-up, it's going to hit those things. And I mean, mostly to me, it's a looks deal. Now, obviously, with two steering stabilizers, it's going to do more than one steering stabilizer is going to do. And one of the advantages of having two steering stabilizers is that as it goes through its range of motion and that shaft comes in and out of the tube, you basically are going to have fluid displacement from that shaft, and the performance of the damping effect is going to change through the stroke. So if you have two of them, it's going to basically mitigate that. So you're not going to have it feel, ooh, it's more resistant now, and then it kind of gets less, and then it kind of increases. It's going to kind of mute that out. Now, alternatively to two steering stabilizers or even an upgraded steering stabilizer, you can go with this Fox unit. So let's go take a look underneath the truck, see what it looks like, and I'll explain some of the advantages to it. This is the Fox ATS steering stabilizer. The A stands for adjustable, and you can see on this far end here is a little adjuster that you can turn with a standard screwdriver. And there's 24 clicks of adjustment, so as you turn it, it basically increases or decreases the damping effect of the steering stabilizer. Now, the steering stabilizer is built out of aluminum instead of steel, so it does a better job with first dissipating heat, and second is it's not going to corrode or rust like a steel one will. The second part of it is TS, so that's what stands for through shaft. So you can see that this part of the shaft, the shock, actually sticks through the body of the shock or the steering stabilizer. So as it goes through the range of motion, the shaft basically stays in the same spot, and the body of the shock basically slides back and forth. Now, the reason for that is kind of what I was discussing earlier. The shaft isn't displacing any of the fluid out of the shock. So essentially, you're not getting any sort of variance in performance, no matter where you're at in the position of the steering range or of where the steering stabilizer is. Now, the second thing that it has is this little miniature reservoir, which is awesome. I think it's the only steering stabilizer I've seen that has a reservoir for it. So that's going to add additional fluid volume to the stabilizer. So you're essentially going to have less likely for it to fade out, because it's just going to dissipate heat more, and with more fluid, it's going to be able to handle increased temperature. So it basically bolts onto the factory location. You can see it has a clamp that goes on to the drag link, and then it connects up to the frame mount on the other end. And it's just using the factory frame mount bolts, and then it uses the Fox clamp on this end. So it's a really pretty easy install to do. Now, we have run into one problem with it, and this is something that we talked to the Fox engineers about, and I guess they're looking at a solution. Is that when you lift the truck, you can see the angle of the steering stabilizer increases. So what it really needs is for this frame mount to drop down maybe 1 inch or so it levels it out. So if the steering stabilizer is running horizontally, it's going to have a lot more damping power than it will if it's at a steep angle like this. So that's probably the only issue that we've seen with this so far, and you can see that because it's at a big angle, it's got this little O-ring bushing that's kind of squishing out at a weird angle there. So it's kind of a strange design issue there that hopefully they'll resolve, and this is only if you have a lifted truck like ours is. So it's something to consider, that you may have to design something if Fox hasn't released a solution for it when you or if you buy one of these. For this application for our truck, we have it set somewhere around 12 or 14 clicks up in resistance, and that works really well. Now we're running about 4 inches of lift and 37-inch tires, and with it turned up at that level, it really provides great damping on the steering. So we really don't feel much of the variations in the road or the tires when they're trying to kick and turn with potholes or whatnot like that, or suspension movement. It's worked really well both on-road and off-road. So I think it's a great solution if you want a flexible, adjustable solution that is capable of basically being what 2 steering stabilizers would be, but then you can also further fine-tune it. So it's a great product. It's not inexpensive. It's probably one of the most expensive steering stabilizers, but it's actually less money than buying 2 steering stabilizers, and I think its flexibility is what really makes it stand out as a great product. So if you have one of these trucks, if you're lifting it, putting bigger tires on it, you definitely want to look at a steering stabilizer, and this is definitely one to consider if you're in the market for it. Hope this was helpful to you. If you have any questions about this steering stabilizer or just in general steering stabilizers, feel free to mention in the comments below. Otherwise, stay tuned for our upcoming videos. We'll have more information that's hopefully helpful to you guys. Thanks for watching.